All right, let's take a look at, gosh, what are we doing? It's Figma number 6. It's filling with a shape. Okay, first of all, look at this. This is kind of where we're headed today. You'll see 5 shapes that are filled with images. You might think to begin with, hey, this is the same thing that in the previous assignment about masking. It's close, but it's not quite. It's a little different. You have some capabilities here that you don't have when you have a mask group, and you have some capabilities with a mask group that you don't have here. So they're a little bit different. One of the differences when you fill a shape with an image like what we've got here, you can add a stroke and an effect. And in fact, you're going to find that that is a required part of today's assignment. You're going to have to do 5 of these, and they are all going to have a stroke around the outside, and they're all going to have an effect applied to them. That's going to be required. Um, there's a handout posted. If I go to Google Classroom, let's go to Google Classroom, and I'll just use second hour as an example, and we're looking at classwork here and Tuesday. All right, there we go. This happens to be a recording being made on Tuesday. There is a handout right here, which I'll show you in a moment. I am using these Star Wars fighters, the U-Wing, Y-Wing, A-Wing, X-Wing, all these. That's what I'm going to use today. You don't have to use those if you don't want to, but you can download those from Google Classroom and use them for today's assignment if you wish. On the handout, you're just going to start a new file and create a frame. I've got instructions here about filling a shape with an image. That's what we're doing today, and there's 2 different ways to do it. Actually, I'm going to show you in a minute what those are. Then you have to add a stroke and an effect, and that is required today. You have to do that to get point. You're going to lose points if you don't. Now this part is optional, this adjusting the image. It gets into playing with things like exposure, contrast, saturation, temperature, tint, highlights, and shadows. And you can do that if you want to, but it's not required today. Okay. Now, one other thing I want to show you here before I take off and get into the how-to is you'll notice in this example that I have that all of the shapes are the same. They are rounded rectangles. All of the strokes are the same. They are red. And all of the effects are the same. It's a drop shadow that's falling in the same direction with the same opacity and the same everything. And that's okay today if you want to do that. It's all right. Or you could mix it up and vary it if you want to. You could use different colored strokes. You could there's not a lot of effects that you have to choose from, but you could do different things on the effects. You could use different shapes if you want to. That's all good. All right. So let's go back to here. Here I am at Figma, and I'm going to start with a new file. And I real quick am going to, I don't have my option to rename yet, so I'll take my frame tool and just draw my frame out there, deselect, and now I can rename. Okay, so this is going to be fill with image, yeah, we fill with image demo, or I'll say movie demo is what I'll do. So give it a name. Don't fall into that habit of leaving your things that you put together as untitled. That is not a good idea. All right, so the first thing we need is a shape. I'm just going to I'll get the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to curve the corners a little bit because I like to. That's up to you. And you could use, like I said, you could use the same shape over and over, or you could use a variety of these things. In the previous lesson about masking, especially with polygons and stars, we covered some things about the count and the ratio and the roundness, the radius of the corners and all that. So you could play with all those kinds of things. You could also use the pen tool over here to make shapes if you want to. That works as well. But I'm just going to kind of keep it simple here for today, and I've made a rectangle and I have rounded the corners. All right, now one way to fill with shapes. There's more than one way. I'm going to show you a couple of ways, and then you use whatever suits you the best. I'm going to come over to the fill box over on the right-hand side, and I'll just click on that gray chip right there. And I'm coming up here to where it says solid, so I'll click there. And then I'm going to go here to where it says image. Oh, all right, so this is one way to do it. So I'll click on image, and it says right here, choose image. It kind of gives you a black and white checkerboard pattern. It says choose image. All right, well, I'll do that. I'll click there. And I have already, let me pull this kind of into the middle. I have already, downloaded all those. There's the A-Wing and the B-Wing and all those fighters from Star Wars. Okay, use something else if you want to, but these are available. So I'll use this. I'll open that. And bingo, look, the image is in the shape. Well, that's the basics. That's how you do that one. I'm going to go ahead and close that little panel over there. Now, do remember that for today, and I'll pull this kind of down nearby, for today, a stroke and an effect are required. Those are required elements today. All right, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add a stroke. And then you can play with all of the things that are on the stroke. Like in this case, I'm not sure a black stroke is the best choice because of the nature of the picture here. So I'll give it a red stroke, but you can do whatever color you want. And then let me close that color picker. And then the size of the stroke, right? And I'm using a scrubby slide feature in there, but you could click in there and put a number. I'll give it a stroke. Let's make it 10. I'll go in there and I'll make that 10. Tab key. The next thing you might want to play with, and this is up to you, the stroke can be inside the picture, outside the picture, or centered on the edge of the picture. So if I go, right now it's on the inside, if I switch it to outside, you see it kind of wraps around the outside of the picture, or if I center it on the edge of the picture, it kind of splits the difference. It's half in, half out. So do whatever you want there. That is up to you. Stroke or an effect is also required today. So right here it says effects. I'm going to hit that plus sign. It automatically will assign to drop shadow, just kind of by default. All right. There's not a lot to choose from here. You could do an inner shadow. I think layer blur and background blur work more effectively when you're actually working on an interactive design, and this one is not going to be an interactive design today. We're just doing this fill with image trick. So you could do inner shadow or drop shadow, suit yourself, do whatever you want there. And right here are the settings for that drop shadow. So I don't know, maybe I'll set the X offset to 5, and I'll hit tab and I'll set the Y offset to 5. And the amount of blur, you can play with that. And the spread of the shadow, you can play with that. And then this is for color and opacity down here. I've got a black shadow that's at 25% opacity. I might bring my opacity up to about 40%. And then I'm looking over here and I'm seeing my shadow that's working around my picture. I'm pretty happy with it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. All right, so this one's done, right? It's a shape that I filled with an image, and it's got a stroke and it's got a shadow. Cool, I'll move it up. Let's draw another shape. And I'm just going to use a rectangle again. And, somebody might say, but wait a minute, Mr. Arvin, couldn't I just alt-drag that and then make some edits to it? Yes, you could. It's possible. I'm just going to draw another one. I'll round the corners a little bit, and I'll park this right over here. Now, actually, you know what? I'll park it up here. Here's another way you can do it. You remember last time I went to the fill setting, and I instead of doing a solid color fill, I selected image off of that menu. Another way you can do it is this. I could go to where we have gone before for place image. That little drop arrow next to rectangle, and I go to place image, and I go find my image. I'll use the B wing for this, and I'll open it. And when my cursor loads up and looks like the image, and when I mean when my cursor loads, I haven't clicked anything yet. Look, I'm moving my pointer around my mouse, and it looks like the B wing. It's loaded up the image. All right, so what I could do, I could just do this. I could just float this right over the shape and just click, boink. And it works. That works. All right. So either way, you could do it the way I showed you on the first one, or you could do it this way. It's up to you. Do it the way it makes sense to you. All right. And now just remember that, yes, a stroke is required. You have to do a stroke today. So I'm going to go with my red again, and I'll bump that up. And I kind of like it on the outside instead of on the inside. So I'll do all of those adjustments to the stroke that I want. And then I'll come down here to the effects, and I'm going to add my drop shadow here again. And I'll go to settings, and what I do before, I don't know. It doesn't have to be the same on all of them, but I'll do a 7 and a 7. And I think I put my opacity at like 40%. And that's looking pretty darn good. All right, so I'll just park that up here. Okay, now let's see. I'm going to show you one line. I'm not going to do all 5 in this demo, but I do have one more thing to show you in this demo. So I'm going to make another shape. Yay. And again, if you're thinking, but you could just alt drag that other shape and then make some changes. You're right. Yeah, that would work. You could do it. I'm going to do the place image. I'll get the U-wing. I'll open that. I'll drop it in. I'm going to go ahead and add my stroke. let's use the same color of red. All right. Oh my goodness, my mouse just drives me nuts. And I'm going to put it on the outside. And I'll go down here to effects, and I want my drop shadow, and I think I did a 7 tab, tab, and I think I put it at 40% for my opacity. I'll press enter right there. All right, so yay, there we go. I'm going to close that little drop shadow dialog. Now, here's what I want to show you on this last one. And this is going to be the last one that's in the movie, right? You have to do 5 to complete the assignment. I'm only doing 3 in the movie because you get it. All right, if I take one of these and I double click, let me move that out a little bit. If I just point to the picture, I got a shape filled with a picture and I double click, it pops up over here. Ooh, I could change the image right there, couldn't I? Sorry. If I double click, I get all of these sliders. We've gone to White Castle. I've got all these sliders where I can adjust the exposure, contrast, saturation, temperature, tint, highlights, and shadows. This is optional stuff, all right? Remember, I said on the handout, this is optional. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. But like say, what if I change the tint of the picture? Oh, look, see that? And what if I change the temperature of that? Right, warm it up or cool it off, or the saturation. Oh, saturation. Take saturation all the way down to the left and makes it black and white. But if I could like really oversaturate it, I could play with things like exposure, lightening it up or darkening it down with exposure. I could play with things like contrast, which won't make a huge difference here, but it'll make a little difference. Highlights, shadows. You could play with all this stuff. Different color, right? Different temperature, boom, look at all of that. You just kind of start playing with those sliders and see if you're getting anything that you like. You know, it's just altering the picture. It's making the picture so it doesn't look the same as what it did. Right, and if you decide you don't like it, you could try to reset these back. I think they kind of snap back into the middle. If you decide, yeah, I don't like any of this stuff, they'll snap back into the middle, which is what you had when you started. Right. Okay, so I think I am going to play with that a little bit. I'll tint that some, kind of like that, and maybe give it a little saturation. Bingo. Okay, so I've altered the image. It doesn't look the same as it did originally. And again, you don't have to do that part, but you double click, and it's gonna fly out with this menu here, and you can play with it all you want, and then just hit that X when you're done. Okay. Now again, please, please, please understand that I did not do the complete assignment. I did 3. You have to do 5. But I don't think you need to watch me do any more. And so I say, off you go.